Greetings folks, Iolair here. Today I've got a replay from myself in the Tier 5 German light cruiser, the Königsberg, and I'm division with Jimmy Jazz, who is in the Tier 5 U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Nicholas. We are in an updated epicenter match. This is a Tier 6 battle on Trident with one Tier 6 aircraft carrier per team, as you can probably tell since the opposing carrier just erased about 20% of my health in a rocket attack. And my build for the Königsberg is mostly centered around being that very annoying long-range HE spammer with Demolition Expert. And since the German cruisers starting at Tier 4 received the 1/4 penetration buff on their high explosive, I don't need to take IFHE to be effective against the vast majority of upper tier ships. Now, this match is going to be, well, individually, it's a very good match, both in terms of my own individual performance as well as the gameplay overall. But it's also going to be a good demonstration, I think, of a good cruiser play. I will point out some places where I think I could have improved my play, and I'm sure anybody else who's watching will have some other recommendations, so I'm always open to feedback. But this is going to start out with me sort of abusing or trying to abuse some cover here on the very south end of the map, where I can fire on opposing ships that are sailing in the open, like this opposing New York, and basically stay either in concealment or at least limit the number of opponents that can fire on me. Because if I can limit the number of opponents that fire on me, I can more easily keep track of who is targeting me and what angle I am to them and what risk they present as an opponent who does want to fire upon me. Now, I originally, like I said, I was looking to fire on the New York. I've now switched my attention to the opposing Pensacola that is moving down the east side of the outer ring. And there he does show up again. He's actually going very slowly. I have AP loaded here, being the good German cruiser that I am, and I am going to land a couple of citadels. I take out almost 11,000 health. My next salvo goes out. This one's not quite as well placed. I do get a few more overpens and a few pens in, but that Pensacola now is quite heavily wounded. Switch my attention here to the opposing Nicholas that is now pushed out. Now, again, here I'm being very careful in terms of my positioning so that I don't expose myself, or I minimize my exposure to the opposition that is on the north side of the rings. And there I claim first blood by taking out the opposing Nicholas. So we can see that the majority of the opposing team's firepower is on the northwest side of the center ring, or no, I shouldn't say the center, the middle ring, I should say, of the epicenter. And so what I want to try to do, and this is one place where I make a slight error, is I want to come out enough that I can put fire on the opposing New York, but continue to have this island that's on my port side provide me protection from the other opposing battleships. Now, I make the mistake here of basically sailing too far out, and that gives both the opposing New York and the opposing Congo, which is now starting to move into the very center of the map, the ability to fire upon me. So this is a mistake. What I should have done is I should have stayed closer to the island so that I could fire on the New York and not be exposed to potential fire from the Congo. Now, right now, I did have only one targeting me at the moment, but then two started targeting me, and I will start seeing others. And you can see that I'm getting a bunch of fires here, but this is where a ship like the Königsberg is very vulnerable. Even though I am kiting these ships, and kiting, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that practice, is basically the act of sailing away while keeping fire on opposing ships. And it's very common that players trying to fire have difficulty firing on ships that are kiting them because they either don't lead correctly or they don't aim correctly. And it also can be very misleading in terms of the speed of the ship that is kiting. So this is a very, very common practice that you see with many cruisers, and even battleships will follow this practice as well. And it's also a practice followed by destroyer players as they're in gun battles, that they will tend to sort of kite away their opponents so that they can more easily avoid torpedoes, or often avoid torpedoes, but also manage the engagement with an opposing destroyer. But you can see that I'm being constantly targeted here. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three. In this case, I knew it was the New Mexico, so I'm going to turn away here. But again, the Königsberg, like many light cruisers, is very, very vulnerable. Even though it is, I will angle well, and I will tend to kite and maneuver as best I can. These ships are so thinly armored that even a single stray battleship AP shell can citadel me pretty much at any angle, at any point, especially through plunging fire. So it is ideal if you can try to, and the term that gets used is abuse cover, and basically fire from concealment, so that you don't run the risk, or you run very low risk, that the opposition will be able to hit you. But sometimes that option doesn't exist, and with these longer range artillery cruisers like the German cruisers, the French, and the Soviet cruisers, sometimes being out in the open is the only option, and you have to be very careful about who can target you when and what threat they present to you. And for like cruisers like this, the main threat is almost exclusively battleships, although heavy cruisers with their AP shells, especially the U.S. Navy heavy cruisers, can also be a major threat as well. Now you can see that the opposing Congo here is fired on me. He's firing at high explosive, so I'm going to turn away, but his shots are going to miss. And I'm not giving him quite enough lead. The Congo is a very quick battleship at Tier 5. It has, I think, a base speed of 30 knots. There I do set another fire. But again, I'm being targeted here, 1, 2, 1. So I'm always looking around to see who is targeting me and when. Now, in this particular situation, I kind of have two problems. First off, I'm actually parallel with a lot of my allied battleships, and preferably when you're a cruiser like this, you want to be behind your battleships. You want your battleships to be closer to the opposition so that they are more likely to take the fire from the opposition and help essentially protect you, because they have the armor and the health and the repair parties to be able to absorb damage more readily than a light cruiser like the Königsberg. But in this particular case, I'm often struggling to stay in a position where I have an allied battleship or two that is more the focus of the opposition than myself. There I just set a fire on the opposing Arizona. And in fact, I sent a second fire, but I think our aircraft carrier is going to finish off the Arizona here. So I'm at about half health, and I felt like, okay, I'm doing okay. I was frustrated about the positioning of our New York. In fact, you're going to see here that I'm going to call out to him to ask him for support. Basically, that's my cue to him that, like, hey, can you move up? Because we really need your health pool and your bigger guns to be closer to the action. And that's, I'm going to ask him a couple more times during the game to get a little closer to the action to be more supportive. Now, you just saw some shells that came over. That was actually fired by the opposing New York, which is over on the west side of the outer ring. And again, I'm being targeted by two, and I'm scanning around trying to figure out who has line of sight on me aside from the New York. And the New York is actually completely outside. In fact, now I have three targeting me. So I know that I expect that, in fact, there is the hit that I was worried about. The New York at over 18 kilometers hits me for a citadel, and that's a reflection of how delicate these ships are, but even a single lucky shot from a battleship at very far range can kind of ruin your day as a light cruiser. And so this is why it's very important to always be looking around and seeing who can target you and when. And this is also why having the priority target skill for me is very important. Now, some players prefer to take the incoming fire alert to indicate when an opposition is actually fired on them. In fact, there you just saw some more shells coming in from the New York that fortunately miss. But that New York has been sort of very has really wanted to finish me off here for a while. Because now a very desirable target. I'm low health, and really another one or two overpens, and I'm done for. So I'm going to continue to sail away here. I'm trying to again get some insulation between me and some of these other battleships. Fortunately, I've gotten out of reach of the New York, and the Congo has gone behind the island. So right now I'm largely protected. Jimmy Jazz, that you can see, who is on the east side of the outer ring, has finished off at least one and maybe two ships. He's working in very close quarters to help finish off ships. Our allied carrier does finish off the Congo. So now there is two battleships that I have to worry about. One is the New York, and I know I'm outside his range, and the other is the New Mexico. Now I'm going to hold my fire here for quite a while, and that's because, well, first off, I don't really have any targets I can shoot at, but because I am such low health, I can't tolerate effectively any more hits from a battleship. I have to get myself into a position where I can fire with impunity and not be at risk of being taken out. So my goal here is to sail up to the island that is at the Echo 9 sector and basically sit behind it in a way that I can fire on the New Mexico, the opposing New Mexico that's moving now sort of southwest, and remain in concealment. And so take some pressure off his ability to fire onto our, well, in fact, we just lost our Congo. I was hoping to get close enough that I could distract, try to get some fire on the New Mexico before our Congo went down. But as luck would have it, that didn't happen. In any case, my goal here is that I can move into a position where I can fire on the Congo. Now, Jim is called target on the low health Genova. I can't hit him. We have two allied battleships that are south of the rings. Hopefully at least one of them can get a hit on them. Jim unfortunately did have to smoke up here because he's coming under attack from the carrier, and Jim runs a full AA build on his Nicholas, so he isn't so concerned about the planes. He's more concerned about being detected by the planes, and the Genova and the Italian cruisers have this very potent semi-armor piercing ammunition that can really ruin the day of cruisers and destroyers. So he wants to stay protected from that for the moment. So I've repositioned here. I'm a little bit confused why I haven't been able to see the New York. It's probably because Jimmy Jazz has been in smoke and our other battleships are not close enough to detect the New Mexico. I do see the New Mexico's plane. I had just a few moments ago put up my own plane to try to spot the New Mexico, and now I do see him. So the practice here that I'm going to follow, and this is something that is more easily done when there are relatively few opponents and you don't have somebody on your flank that can spot you. I can now abuse this cover, remain in concealment, and put constant fire on the New York without fear of him being able, it would be very difficult for him to hit me back. I have had battleships try to blind fire me when I'm following this practice. This is a practice that a lot of battleship players really dislike from cruisers, is sort of this abuse of terrain to be able to fire from concealment and basically get a lot of free damage. But given my relatively low health, this is the best option I have to contribute to the team and stay alive. Now, you notice that I'm being very careful about how sort of paced I am in moving forward here. I want to be able to be close enough to the island that I stay concealed, but far enough away that my shells will make it over the terrain. And there will be a brief point here where I will get detected here because the terrain will be just a tad too low. I do have two fires burning on the New Mexico right now. Now, if I were a good German cruiser, I'd be firing AP at this point since he is broadside. But I knew that the New Mexico had damage controlled the first fire I'd set on him, so I was hoping to get even a third fire on him. Now, I mentioned that I do get briefly detected. I'm not too concerned because the New Mexico does not have his guns turned toward me, but I do creep forward a little more to get a little more cover here, and I can continue to fire with impunity on the New Mexico. New Mexico is almost down. Our carrier is striking him as well, and the New Mexico is going to go down here. So that leaves the Genova, which was last seen in the center over at Echo 4, Echo 5. You can see Jimmy Jazz is pinging on the map. And now we have detected the opposing carrier. So I'm going to creep forward here and start putting some fire on the carrier. Now, the carrier does have the means to finish me off. He got a very large rocket salvo on me right at the beginning of the match. So he knows that if I start putting fire on him, he could come and finish me off. But for whatever reason, he isn't committing. He won't end up committing his planes to me. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to be able to come out here and put some basically unopposed fire on the Ranger for basically the rest of the game. I'm going to be getting Citadels here, some through APs. I'm not sure if I got any HE Citadels as well, but I do start switching to HE because it looked like he was starting to angle away. And in fact, there I've just earned high caliber. Interestingly, in this match, I do not earn Confederate, even though I kind of spread the love around. My colleague Lynn Wilkie looked at my results, and he suspects I just didn't do quite enough damage to the opposing Arizona to count toward the, I think it's the 20% damage requirement across at least 6 opponents in order to earn Confederate. So I just barely missed Confederate in this match, but a very good match nonetheless, and we are going to win quite handedly here, and hopefully a good demonstration of some cruiser practices. The next replay will also feature a light cruiser with also very good results, but also a good demonstration of light cruiser practices. So I hope you enjoyed the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there, and we wish you happy sailing.